So, hi everyone viewing this presentation. It is my honor to be able to give a quick lecture to you all on the impact of COVID-19 on unemployment rates. I appreciate that the lecture I'll be giving is university level, and being honest, it took a lot of extra research and time for me to get this model as well. So please don't understand if this is difficult to understand. Please don't worry if this is difficult to understand, sorry. I'll try my best to make this model as simplified as possible. So just as a quick introduction, my name is Lynn, and I have just completed my second year reading economics at the University of Bristol. I've just completed my summer internship at Barclays Investment Bank under sales and trading, and more specifically under the equities electronic trading desk. If you have any questions regarding tips and advice on how the university life is like, especially at Bristol, how studying economics as a degree is in general, or even any personal questions regarding my motivations in reading economics, please feel free to ask, as there will be a quick Q&A session later. And if there were any questions that you would rather ask without other people listening in, I will drop my personal details at the end of the Q&A as well. So please feel free to reach out personally. Okay, so without further ado, I'll be giving a short lecture on how unemployment rates have been impacted by COVID-19 all over the world, with a quick dive into using the search and matching model in aid of explanation. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the rise of the COVID-19 virus that has been about all over the world, and this sadly has increased unemployment rates. I even came across multiple articles stating that unemployment rates have been rising higher than the Great Depression in 2008. As pictures shown on this slide, you can see the sharp increase in unemployment rates in 2020, with Malaysia, which is where I'm from, not being an exception. So the search and matching model, which we will note as the SAM model throughout this lecture, is made up of three equations, which gives an explanation on the counter-cyclical unemployment rates and pro-cyclical job creation rates. Pro-cyclical meaning when there is a boom in an economy, the job creation rate increases, and counter-cyclical meaning the opposite. So why don't we just use a basic demand and supply model to outline the unemployment rates in an economy? Well, the SAM model notes market labor friction as shown in the diagram, as opposed to the basic demand-supply model, so it is more feasible in the real economy. Market labor friction is basically just the degree of mismatch between the workers and the employers, and this could be anything that stops an immediate employment. For example, geographical location, where maybe a worker lives really far away from their workplace, and therefore, even with the right skill sets, they would not accept a job offer. Okay, so the first equation we will take a look at is the Beveridge curve, which shows the steady state relationship between the labor market tightness, which is shown in the y-axis in this diagram, and the unemployment rate, which is shown in the x-axis of this diagram, and the curve is downward sloping and convex. So this is represented by the equation above, and this equation is derived from assuming unemployment rate is constant, and hence the number of people moving from employment to unemployment, which is the separation rate multiplied by the number of employed, and the number of people moving from unemployment to employment, which is the finding rate multiplied by the number of people employed, is equal. So the Beveridge curve gives the combinations of vacancy rates and unemployment rates such that the unemployment rate is constant over time. So basically, if the curve shifts to the right, it will indicate an increase in unemployment rate given the same market labor tightness. And market labor tightness describes the balance between demand and supply for labor. Economists say that the labor market is tight when there is more job openings and fewer unemployed people. As you can see from the slide, the higher the number of vacancies relative to the number of people unemployed, the tighter the labor market. So considering the pandemic, I think the labor market is arguably loose right now. Okay, next is the job creation condition, which replaces the typical demand curve in the demand-supply model and is represented by the equation shown. This equation states that due to free entry and hence zero economic profits, in equilibrium, the expected present value of profits from a filled job must equal to the average cost of a vacant job. So to put it simply, it basically means how much a firm should gain from extra profits hiring a worker should at least equal to the cost of filling the job, i.e., the firm will only have demand for vacancy if it at least brings them a profit. So finally, we will take a look at the wage curve, which should replace the typical supply curve in the demand-supply model, and is the result of a bilateral bargaining process between the agents over the surplus from market friction. This is represented by this equation shown, which basically means that unemployment benefits, bargaining power, cost per vacancy, and output will affect the wage rate. So let's take a worker's unemployment benefits, for example. When the government offers a higher unemployment benefit, it will kind of discourage workers to work because the difference in pay for working in a job and not working at all is slimmer. So this would increase wages because employers would need to pay their workers higher wages for compensation. I know this sounds a bit weird, but it's how it works in real life. And this would shift the wage curve to the left, or upwards if you like, if all else is constant. So if you combine this equation with the job creation curve from before, in turn you get unemployment rate star and theta star, and we call this the job creation line. So I appreciate that was quite technical, but this is where everything ties together and starts to make a bit more sense. So we combine the three curves together on a diagram to explain what happens during a recession. So during a recession, the aggregate demand of an economy decreases, which is represented by a fall in Y. So a decrease in Y would shift both the job creation curve and the wage curve downwards. And as you can see on the diagram, in turn, this decreases wage rates, labor market tightness, and vacancy rates, while increasing unemployment rates in an economy. For the intuitive bit, during a recession, aggregate demand decreases, hence firms reduce productions accordingly. All else remaining constant, this reduces firms' expected profits from opening a vacancy, hence open fewer vacancies, explaining job creation being pro-cyclical. And with fewer vacancies per unemployed worker, unemployed workers are more willing to settle for a lower wage. This is represented by a shift of the job creation curve and the wage curve downwards, and a decrease in wages and market labor tightness as seen in the diagram. So intuitively, we know that the job creation curve has a greater shift downwards than the wage curve, since it is largely affected by aggregate demand, which is Y. And a decrease in market labor tightness pivots the job creation line downwards, since firms open fewer vacancies, making it harder for the unemployed to find work, resulting in an increase in the equilibrium unemployment rate. So this explains why unemployment rate is countercyclical. So now I'm sure those of you who do economics will be familiar with this equation, hopefully, on aggregate demand, which basically shows that aggregate demand in our economy is made up of consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports. So as reference to the graph on our previous slide, the case with COVID-19 is no different, since lockdown measures in place reduce consumption in our economy. Investors are no longer confident and hence not investing. Exports are decreasing in demand, etc., which, by the way, is why governments are releasing fiscal and monetary measures in attempt to reboost economies. So post-COVID-19 could result in an unemployment trap where unemployment is persistently high from depressed demand, firms reluctant to open vacancies, and households unwilling to spend. A sharp fall in investment is also expected, which permanently reduces the capital stock and productive capacity of the economy if not recovered. It is possible that the rise in unemployment could be more persistent than embodied if the assumption that the decrease in spending while social distancing measures are in place will be made up for does not hold, from reasons such as companies being reluctant to hire until recovery in demand is certain. Any rise in unemployment could also lead to an increase in the long-term equilibrium rate of unemployment if the skills of the unemployed do not increase to the same extent. Long-term unemployment is basically unemployment that lasts for a year or more and can be used to explain why the UK unemployment rate was not falling in the 1980s while the economy was booming. So I'm going to go a little bit off topic here, but to wrap up this presentation and to answer the question of will unemployment rates be persistently high, it's kind of essential. So different economies are using different measures to soften the negative effects from COVID-19. Probably countries with a lower debt to GDP ratio would rely more on monetary policies, while others may rely a bit more on fiscal measures, mostly a combination of both. Taking the UK, for example, it used expansionary monetary policy, which means like they reduced the bank rate, and they reduced it from 0.75% to 0.1%. And although this should encourage aggregate demand and decrease the unemployment rate in the short run, the idea that the unemployment rate cannot be permanently affected by monetary forces, since the long-run Philip curve is vertical from assuming households' rational inflation expectations, proves that a permanent increase in the long-run rate is debatable. So in conclusion, even if there is a surge in the short-term unemployment rates, the long-term rate is ultimately depends on the factors of the economy. The extent of an economic recovery and unemployment rate recovery from COVID-19 is conditioned on the scale of social distancing measures implied and the structure of the labor market institution. So that wraps up the lecture bit on unemployment. I hope that was an alright presentation and you learned something from that. Just as an FYI, this is a topic you would learn in second year as an economics student who is taking a mandatory macroeconomics module. Okay, so now I'll be talking about the University of Bristol entry requirements, so on and so forth. So I just took a screenshot from the university's website, and this is accessible if you just search for University of Bristol Economics on Google, and it should be the first result that pops up. So this course is a 3-year course, and the fees are shown as shown in the picture, but please note that this is subject to change as well. It could fluctuate and differ from the picture on the slide. As you can see, it's available for clearing students as well. I know there's like some problems with the A-level results. Fun fact, I myself was a clearing student. So if you're in my position in the past, like please don't worry. So, okay, the entry requirements are A** AA, including mathematics for A-levels and 38 points for IB. I was an A-level student myself, and I did double maths, physics, and economics. So I will be more familiar with that if there's like, any questions regarding entry requirements. So please note that this is for economics, and there are others such as like economics and finance, economics and accounting, etc. And the entry requirements for economics and finance and such are different as well. I attached a screenshot of the economics and finance one on the next slide, which is here. As you can see, it's AAA, so you might want to have a check on the different entry requirements through the website if you're interested, but I don't think the entry requirements should fluctuate too much. So like on a more personal note, being at the university has been the best time of my life. I've traveled so much, and as you can see, like the first picture is me in Spain, which I went during the most recent winter break. And I volunteered to teach refugee children while completing my degree. Last summer, I volunteered in China to teach children English, and the university actually gave me a scholarship to do that. I've also ran marathons, like 10 km marathons in Bristol for refugee children. I earned the Bristol Plus Award, did a part-time job as a waitress for 3 months in a Japanese restaurant, and so many other activities in Bristol during my time as a student. And Bristol was really supportive in having many career talks and consultations as well, which I believe helped me in my interviews, which secured me a summer internship at Barclays, which I believe is quite hard to get, especially for international students. There is also a picture I took of one of the university's building on the bottom left. It's called Wills Memorial, and I have some lectures in there as well. The library is really pretty. I wish I had pictures of it inside, but unfortunately I don't. And these are just a few of my friends that I've met over the years, and the people I've met at Bristol and at university are like, they're so sweet, and they're like the closest friends I've ever had. So yeah, I'm just like, I think if you go to Bristol, you in general just meet a lot of really, really nice people. Okay, so now I think it's time for the Q&A session. I've just added my contact details, so please feel free to reach out if you have anything you'd like to ask in private. I wouldn't mind any of the following ways of contact.
Thanks very much, Lynn. It was very informative, and even I learned something new. Why economic students are asked to be so good at maths.
Yeah.
So, for those of you who have any questions, please feel free to post them in the Q&A now, and Lynn and I will take a bit of time to go through them. One question that I know people will have on their minds is, how did you get an internship? What did you do to set yourself apart from other students?
To get my internship in Barclays, I'm not gonna lie, it was really tough and there's a lot of competition, but some things I did was go for like the career talks that the university provided. I also went for a session where like they help you check your CV and such, so I think that helped. Also, on a more personal level, I just applied everywhere. Like I applied to probably 20 and got quite a few rejections, which is perfectly normal, but yeah. And just be yourself, because like in interviews they usually can see your true personality and they can see if you've like memorized answers, which they don't want. They want you to be like your true self. So I hope
Great.
that answers the question.
Very well. And why did you choose economics, Lynn?
So I chose economics because I like maths a lot, and I knew that economics had a lot of maths in it. Also because like I'm personally from Malaysia, and like ever since I was young, every time my family and I went to Singapore, like I always wondered why the prices were so high, and like so I was thinking like, so does that mean like, everyone in Singapore has to work really hard to like put food on the table and stuff? And then, I was really young, so I was just really curious about that, all that, and I like kept asking a lot of people like their thoughts on it and such. And then that's when I kind of realized I think I should do economics, because like it not only it answers that question, but like it gives you a lot of analytical skills which a lot of employers are looking for. Yeah, it also gives you a lot of commercial awareness, because like obviously when you're doing essays and such, you have to search a lot of like news and all, so you automatically will have good commercial awareness for economics, which I think is like something that employers are looking for now as well.
Fab. We've got a question about the living costs in Bristol. Is it expensive, totaling up with your tuition fee? Do you find Bristol expensive, and how much do you spend on average?
Okay, so my dad, he just gives me like a one lump sum of £30,000 a year, and that is including my accommodation, that is including the school fees, and the rest like he just leaves it up to me to like spend. So if I'm being really honest, Bristol is really cheap compared to London. Like I know so many people in London who are like struggling to meet like their finances because everything there is so expensive. Bristol is definitely cheaper relative to London. I would say personally on average I spend about £300 a month, and that includes like, entertainment, like going out with friends, food, eating out, everything. Yeah. But I think typically if you cook more, definitely that will be cheaper, because I eat out a lot. And obviously if you go out more, it will be more expensive. So
And just to clarify, £300 a month doesn't include your accommodation, right?
yeah, no, it's just like for leisure.
Great. So if anyone else has got more questions, feel free to post them now. And we will get to answering them. But if there are no more questions, then we'll call the session to an end. So I hope all of you are typing really fast now. maybe Lynn, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the differences between economics and finance? Because I know I get that question a lot from students.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, wait, hold on. I think I just stopped sharing my screen.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, so the difference between economics and finance and economics. So I chose economics instead of economics and finance because people who do economics usually they have more of a chance to choose their optional modules. So I have quite a few friends who are doing economics and finance, and they are like, for example, one of their mandatory modules is corporate finance, and I get to choose whether I want to do corporate finance or not, but where else they don't have a choice. So personally, because when I first entered university, I didn't know that I wanted to do like sales and trading, or I didn't know that I wanted to be in the stock market, or I just didn't know what I wanted to do. Like I could have gone into consulting or whatever. So that's why I chose economics, because it has more flexibility.
Great, very interesting. Okay, so the last question was, will this webinar be shared online? Hopefully, if we set up a Southeast Asia YouTube channel, but in any case, for everyone who attended this event, you'll be sent the recording by email tomorrow or the day after. So let's end on this parting note. Lynn, have you got any advice for students who, oh, sorry, we've got one last question. Do you have any tips for standing out in the personal statement?
Oh, I wrote my personal statement really long ago, but honestly, when I was writing my personal statement, I got a lot of help from my teachers, and they gave me really good advice. If you would like to, like, have a copy of my personal statement, I wouldn't mind sharing it. I think that's allowed, right?
As long as you don't copy it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to like share it with you. So, like, feel free to like email me or something.
And a general tip for personal statements is remember the ABCs: A for activities, B for benefits, C for course. So think of the things that you've done. Think of how those things have given you skills and qualities that are relevant to an economics degree or the degree of your choice. Universities love to see that students have a genuine interest in the field that they're choosing and that they have already pursued activities that lead to the qualities that are desired for that course. Hope that answers your question. And now we'll wrap up with some parting words from Lynn. Lynn, do you have any advice for prospective economics students to the University of Bristol or to the UK overall?
Um, I think so a lot of my friends have, like, it's one of a complaint that I've heard quite often from economics students, that like they didn't know that there's going to be so much maths in economics. So I would say that definitely, even though you have an interest in economics, but if you don't like maths, or especially statistics, like if you just can't do it, or like you just hate it, like I wouldn't really recommend economics, because there's a lot of maths and statistics, almost as much as we learn about economics. So yeah, I think that would be like my biggest advice, I guess.
That's brilliant, because we do need an A in maths for you to get in. So thanks very much, everyone, for joining us for our Southeast Asian Student Lecture Series 2020. Please feel free to get in touch with either Lynn or myself or the International Office if you've got any other questions. We wish you all the best in your pursuit of higher education. Thanks and good night.
Thank you.